Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing again. Believe in a power greater than what you are going through. When you don't know what to do, keep breathing.
That's right. When you don't know what to do, just keep on breathing. From the City of Angels in Los Angeles. Welcome to all my listeners out there in Radio Land. I'm Dave, the Caregiver's Caregiver at caregiverdave.com, along with my lovely co-host, former mayor of a California beach town and best-selling author, Debbie Peterson. And we're also coming to you live and on demand 24/7 on numerous syndicated radio and podcast networks on 30 global audio and video platforms, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, Spreaker, SoundCloud, Vimeo, a whole bunch more. In fact, we're proud we voted #1 caregiver podcast on FeedSpot out of thousands, and #1 caregiver podcast of the top 50 on Player FM. And we have an especially exciting show planned for you today. Irma Velasquez is a nonprofit leader and founder of organizations focusing on special ed, the arts, and personal transformation. And she received an honorary doctorate from the University of San Francisco for her contribution to the education community. And her unique experience has qualified her to guide parents and health professionals in navigating the complexities of the special ed system. Before I do that, I want to take this moment to thank my last week's guest, journalist, wife, and mother of 4 grown sons. Sarah Cart shares her experience of being thrown into becoming a caregiver for her husband while still keeping them afloat in her recently released memoir, On My Way Back. And just a reminder, you can watch or listen to that interview and all our interviews on our membership website, caregiverdave.com, or any of our other 30 global audio and video networks. Irma, so great to have you on the Caregiver Dave radio show.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. It's really a pleasure to be here. It's one of my favorite topics, caregiving.
Well, the pleasure is ours. And I always like to ask my guests just who is Irma Velasquez and why was she placed on this earth?
That is a big question.
It's a big question. We're starting big right out of the gate.
Starting big, but it's a question that I have asked myself since I was very young. Probably when I was 13, I asked myself that question. I remember it because I was given a book called Me, Myself, and I don't remember the book, but I remember my quest for finding out the answer to that question has not stopped. I'm 70 years old right now, and I'm still asking that question. But one thing that I know that I am here to do is to find out who is underneath that personality, all the beliefs and the ideas of that comes with my name and my titles and what I've done. Who's that person underneath? So I'm still asking that question.
Well, you're my age. I've been asking that question too. Well, let's talk about boundaries. You know, we all need them to feel safe. And like I mentioned earlier, I think all of our problems can somehow be traced to boundaries or lack thereof. Why don't you start by defining what are boundaries, especially for caregivers?
Well, I can start with a big question about boundaries, and then I can narrow it down. We are boundless individuals. We have unlimited. We're unlimited beings. That's how I see myself. And being in that unlimited space, unlimited place is very scary. So we put some limits around the way we think, the way we act, the way we interact with other individuals, and those start to create some boundaries and also some limitations. So boundaries are our way to feeling safe. And we all have them. We couldn't live without them. And they're important. And they're also something that we can push against.
Well, the way you describe it, it sounds like, are they good or are they bad?
Well, I think they're both. They're both. It depends on how we relate to those boundaries. For example, if I didn't have a boundary of time, for example, this podcast or this conversation would be really chaotic, right?
It would never end.
We have a limited time. So boundaries gives us a structure for us to work within. So it's a need, but also boundaries limit us if we allow the boundaries to guide what we do. So I really believe in that. Your first question about who am I? It's a question that I keep asking myself is what am I being asked to do right now in this moment as I sit with both of you here? And my dog's barking outside, want to be let in. Now, what's the best? What am I being asked to do in this moment? And there are some limitations to that response, and that's what I call boundaries. But
Well,
your second,
I've spoken about boundaries a lot, on my podcast and stuff, and I've never looked at it that way. It was always about having boundaries with other people so they don't cross them and violate them. But I never thought about us putting boundaries on ourselves. Anyway, that is interesting. And so now you got me thinking, what boundaries am I putting on myself? Because it's true, we are boundless individuals, and sometimes that no fence, tends to be a little intimidating.
it is scary. I
Yeah,
think
I'm going to be thinking about that for the next week. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's something I think often. But the other part of your question was about caregiving,
Yeah,
which is really important. And as a parent, we deal with that from the moment our child is born, is the boundaries, how much to give. It's a constant question that we ask. And as for those of us who continue caregiving until we have parents. I have a son who is an adult, and I'm still caregiving. My husband also. There's caregiving there. There's my caregiving for myself. Where do the boundaries come from or come into play? I think that's the second part of your question, which I think it's another fascinating way to see how we relate to other people, and how do we choose to put those, where do we choose to put those boundaries?
yeah. So yeah, we'll talk about the good boundaries and the bad boundaries today. Irma, as you know, our audience are burned out caregivers. And one of the most obvious things about boundaries is a lot of these caregivers, they don't know, maybe they haven't even heard of the word boundaries in their own life.
Yeah.
And so they don't know what a boundary is, and they don't know how to instill a boundary. So I'll give an example. Let's say, you're getting interrupted all night long by your loved one because, maybe they're drinking water too late in the night, and now they have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, waking you up. And a healthy boundary, for example, might be, listen, you can no longer drink anything after 8 o'clock p.m. And that way, you don't have to get up. I don't have to get up. And that's just the boundary I'm going to implement. And so if you ask for something to drink, I'll put, maybe a throat lozenge if you're feeling dry, that'll help you and not activate the bladder. So that'd be an example of the healthy boundary. So what do you think about implementing safe boundaries to our loved ones? And are there certain boundaries that you would consider, not a good idea or not safe, or they won't accomplish the goals that we are desiring?
Having 30 years of experience with an autistic son, that question comes up all the time.
Right.
And what I have found to be important is and it may take a little bit longer. And initially, I want to say that it's a process that brings in the other person. So if the example that you just gave about waking up in the middle of the night, I would ask my loved one, what would support you throughout the night, so you wouldn't have to get up often and you can get more sleep. Looking at the other person's needs before looking at my needs. That way, there's an exchange comes up, and maybe he or she would come up with an answer that I haven't even thought about, and we can try it. And it could be immediate, or sometimes you try something, but it's a give and take. It's a conversation. It's a relationship that you start to build, that this caregiving it's also up to you. For example, my son sometimes, doesn't want to go to bed, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm half of my ear is listening to him, so I can't get enough sleep. So where's my boundaries in those? How do I implement those boundaries?
Yeah.
And it's that's what has worked for me in the long run is what will work for both parties.
That's a great idea, because if the idea came from them, they're more likely to adhere to it.
Yeah.
Maybe another boundary, if the first one didn't work, is wearing a diaper to bed. Whatever.
Yeah.
I have to get up. So,
Exactly. Yeah. There's.
what do you think, Tab?
I really like that because I've always taken that same approach as a person who's trained in public relations is, well, what is it the other guy needs? Because if I can help fulfill their needs, then they'll be able to be responsive to mine. So I think that I like that principle. I'm wondering, there's a note in here about intentions. Can you talk a little more about intentions and why they matter?
Yeah, intentions, I find they're really crucial because they're guiding principles. And for example, in what we just talked about, putting boundaries, if we have an intention of including the other individual in all decisions that we make, that's an intention. And sometimes an intention may not be able to be followed through. You can't include it in every, but if you come from that intention, I want to include my loved one in all decisions or in most important decisions that we make, it's going to be a mutual. That's my intention. So when a problem comes up, that intention is sort of behind saying, oh, how do you include that person? What do you need to do now to include him in this decision? And sometimes you don't, because you need to, you need to go to the doctor, or you need to stop before crossing the street, or you're going to be run over. So it's not always, but the intention guides your actions in the long run.
Yeah, you know what they say about good intentions.
Right.
I've given so many individuals compliments, well, your intentions were really good, but usually there's a but to follow that. The road to hell is filled with good intentions,
Right.
but sometimes that doesn't always work. And sometimes, if you disagree, I always say, well, okay, let's vote. I get 51% voting power and you get 49%. And gosh, I guess I won, and maybe it's a nice way to make them laugh too. But, what do you think of that?
Well, but the intention, that's the second part of the intention, there has to be an action that's attached to that intention. Otherwise, it's just an intention, right? And what you just said, every path to hell is paved with good intentions. That's because there's no action to follow it. But if you have an intention and you use it to act in a certain way, to me, that's the power of an intention.
Yeah, and the Bible preaches that too, because it says, I think Jesus said somewhere in one of his parables, he says, it's better to do the wrong thing. Wait, I get this right now. So we shouldn't do even a good thing if we have bad intentions or bad motivation. I don't know if we can use those words interchangingly, but I think it's better to do to have good motivation and make a mistake than to have bad motivations and do the right thing,
Yeah. For me, an intention is a focus. It's a way of focusing. It's not something behind my actions. It's like, what's going to guide me? What's my guiding principle? If I want to lose weight, my intention is to be healthy, not to lose, but personally, not to lose weight, but to be healthy. And in that, other things will happen. So, and I would act differently if I wanted to lose weight than if I want to be healthy. Those are two very different ways of approaching my life.
Yes, and that's important to bring that up. What's the career trajectory of a caregiver? And in other words, I guess you're asking why are they caregiving? Are they caregiving because they love it? Are they caregiving because they enjoy, being a servant to a fellow servant to their fellow person? or was there nobody else and they were drafted into this and they hate every day of it?
Yeah, I would just ask that. I've asked that of different caregivers that I work with. My son, what is your career objective? If do you have one? One of the women who works for him was wonderful. She's been with us for about 10 years. She says, I just want to serve. I love to serve. I love what I do. And that's all I want to do in my life. Another young man, he wants to have a profession. He wants to have skills. He wants to learn new things. And that's what he's doing. He wants to learn about budgets and finance and social different structures and policy. And that's what he's doing. So he is a caregiver. So I think it's important to find that out for ourselves, not. And I ask that of caregivers, and I ask that of myself, because I'm here with you because I have a caregiver taking care of my son. If I wanted to be with him, I would be with him. But I really love bringing this information out into others.
You're not only helping him, you're helping others.
Yeah.
And what is his age and what is his special needs?
He's 31 and he has autism. He's on the most, my husband's actually diagnosed himself with autism as well. And my husband and my son are on the extreme ends of autism. My husband's a brilliant scientist, pianist.
We're talking about high functioning.
High functioning is a word that is used less and less. Now we're using more support. He needs less support than my son, who needs more support. My son needs 24/7 support. My husband needs.
So they're both on the opposite end.
They're both on the opposite end of the spectrum, and many of their behaviors are very similar. But they manifest themselves differently. My son is nonverbal and my husband's very verbal. He can't stop talking. And my son, I communicate with him in a very different way, in nonverbal way, gestures, and some energetic way of communicating. So
God, for Elon Musk, he's the richest man in the world and he's the smartest man in the world. And look what he's accomplished. And it just gives hope to anybody on the spectrum.
Yeah, exactly. And also,
he's not the only one. There are many.
There's many people on the spectrum, and we sometimes neglect the needs of those that are as brilliant as Elon Musk or my husband, or any one of us. We're all on the spectrum in some ways. We all need support. I mean, we wouldn't be here without the support of the technology and our friends and people we love. So we all need support, but some of us need more than others.
I'm wondering, you're talking so much about relationship and intentions, and of course, if we share the same intention, or at least understand each other's intentions, there's so much more trust. Mm-hmm. It works so much better. And I'm really curious for you, you talked about you can be here because you have help with your son's needs. What is your intention in being here today? Why did you come on at the last minute when we had someone else who was ill and couldn't join us? What's your intention?
Thank you for that question. My intention is to bring the approach that I use, that I call deep living approach to life, where we can live in a deeper way, connecting with ourselves and with others. To me, that goes back to your first question. Why am I here? I believe that I am here to live a full, deep, meaningful life. And that's not just being out there, watching TV or looking at my phone all day, but there's something, I'm being called to do something more with my time, with my life, with my resources, my personal and in every other way. So that's why I'm here, because I wanted to share that with your audience, especially with caregivers. My heart goes out, and I am so, so grateful to hundreds of caregivers that have been part of my life. This morning, I got an email from a woman who was my son's caregiver about 15 years ago. Now she's the director of special education in a school district. And, it just filled my heart that she's now working in a school system, helping so many other children. So that to me, I tend to be a, a caregiver in more of a social way. I think of many people when I think about caregiving. And some people think about one person, which is wonderful, like this woman who works with us, who she wants to just work with my son and she loves him. And before that, she worked with a young woman for 15 years before working with my son. And she was putting her health on the line. And so she said she had to leave that job. But so we all do things for different reasons. And I love to, you know, share what has helped me live a purposeful life with others.
Yes, and opportunity does knock. And you didn't have to do today's show. I mean, you could have waited in the very long line of people trying to get on the show, which would be, in February or March. But you took advantage of it, and I think smart people do that. They have to be flexible. They got to say, you know what? Let me shift a few things around. I think I can do this. And here you are, uh, one of the first ones in line to be on the show and to minister to people. And who knows what will happen from this interview?
Yeah, we don't know.
And another thing I want to talk about, autism used to be very rare. I mean, I don't know what the numbers were, maybe 1 in 100,000 or maybe more than that. But lately, it seems like, it's 1 in every 35 or 50 or 100. This seems like, well, what happened? I mean, I was listening to Bobby Kennedy Jr. talk about this, and he says, we're slowly getting poisoned with the air, with the water, with the food. The pharmaceuticals get us sick, and then they sell us pills to get us well, and then we need more pills because of the side effects to get us sick on all of that. And he's alarmed at the autism ratio. What's your opinion of all that?
Well, my son was diagnosed in 1997. And the statistics I was given back then, it was 1 in 10,000. So I didn't know the word autism, and nobody around me knew the word autism. I wrote a memoir based on my experiences over the past 20, 30 years, just about. And what I've seen is that, yes, there is an increase, but also there's more attention being paid to autism. It wasn't until about early 2000s that doctors started to ask some of the questions that my pediatrician for my son never asked. Like, is he talking? Does he point? How is his balance? Yeah. Does he ask questions? And those kind of questions would give you some hints about the development of your child.
And he's just quiet,
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, I know you didn't know back then. So it's that came in early 2000s. There was I remember seeing those questions posted on doctors' offices. So part of it is awareness. So, and the other part, I'm not a scientist. I haven't done research in autism, but there's some genetic complications, and that has been done actually genetically. My husband and my son, it's evident there, and a lot of people have more than one child with autism. So there's some genetic component to autism, and toxicity, is something that we all deal with. I can't speak directly to that, but I have seen the number go from 1 in 10,000 to now is 1 in 32, 1 in 34. I mean, that is drastic.
That is shocking.
It is shocking.
Yeah, maybe a lot of them were undiagnosed, but gosh, I bet money on it that a lot of it has to do with things that were unavoidable. And we'll find out once Bobby gets in the job that he's been signed up for. We find out, the ugly truth, because, I think your pharmaceuticals are just they just have way too much power. I mean, they're supporting the politicians. They're giving them money. Our politicians are being bought, and they're more loyal to their donors than they are to the American people. And I hope that stops. We'll see.
It's a difficult one. It's a difficult question to answer because there's so many factors involved in it. You know, there's a genetic factor. There's the about the sensitivity of individuals. I know that my son is, and my husband too, is sensitive to certain sounds or certain, you know, foods, gluten and casein. You know, we all have sensitivities, and we respond differently to them.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's an easy question to answer, but I definitely think it's one that we need to pursue and continue to ask. Continue to ask.
We're running out of time. Time goes so fast. Debbie, what questions do you have?
I'm wondering, you're a university trustee, and are you seeing trends among young people entering the healthcare professions? We've been talking a little bit about what Bobby Kennedy is addressing. What are you seeing?
I am seeing, I happen to be in a University of San Francisco, that is highly diverse. It's one of the most diverse universities in the country. And many of the individuals who come from families that are, you know, they're the first ones to go to college. So I see, because of that, I see a lot of young people wanting to serve, because I think culturally they have had that trajectory. Um, it's wonderful to see the increase in fields in nursing and health professions, in the mental health professions, therapy. Um, I've seen a growth, at least among the people that I'm around the university. A number of them want to serve, you know, want to be people who don't just they don't want to just go make money, but the values are a lot different than when I was going to school tens of decades ago, where we were focusing on careers and how much money am I going to make when I get out of college. So I've seen that a lot more. But maybe because that's my focus too.
Oh, you're a director of a special education school. You know, our church built a very magnificent special aids section by the man who designed the Indiana Jones ride for Disneyland. He happened to be a member, and it's just packed with different sensory stations and this and that. And we're the only one in the city of Santa Clarita who has such a thing. And so it's people come to our church just because of that special needs that we built. But what misconceptions do teachers have about their jobs?
About themselves? I think the biggest misconceptions teachers have is that they're responsible. They are the only ones. They put themselves, and I've seen this over and over, they put so much weight on themselves. They don't ask for help more often enough. And, you know, usually it's because of so many reasons, but there is this loyalty and responsibility that makes teachers good teachers, right? Because they want to do a good job and they want to serve their students. And that in itself puts a load on them, so that they don't ask questions. You know, they don't ask, well, how come I can't do this? Why do I need to do that? Why are you asking me to do this? And where does the money come from? How can I get more funding? How can I get more support? There's a lack of questions there, and I'm not quite sure why.
Can't believe how fast our time has gone today. Is there anything else that you were hoping we would ask you before we sign off?
Well, I'm just curious to from you, what is the one thing that you would give advice to caregivers? What is one advice that would mostly help caregivers? Because you listen to so many people talk.
Well, it's self-care. It's putting your needs first. Take care of yourself. Put your oxygen mask on first. You know, I have a grandson who was adopted by our daughter because they didn't think they could have children. Then all of a sudden they had two daughters after that naturally. Mm-hmm. And he kind of got the short end of the stick because, you know, the two daughters got more attention, and he was diagnosed as high functioning Asperger. And as he reached, you know, he was what we would consider a problem child or a high energy person, you know. And he started hanging out with the wrong people when he was a teenager and started smoking grass and breaking into garages. And one time he went, in and out of juvenile hall. And then when he got out the last time, they got drunk, him and a friend, and they accidentally went joyriding and killed another person in an accident. And so he's currently in Washington State prison up there. And I talk to him frequently. He calls a couple times a week, and I could just see how he's really maturing. And it just sounds normal, but I'm thinking, well, he's finally getting the structure and the discipline and the boundaries that he needed all of his life. Because, I can't even see any autistic symptoms from him. The only thing that I can see is, he needed some anger management. If somebody pushes your buttons, he would hit you. And now he's controlling that. And I'm really pleased at what's going on there. I would just tell other people, either the Army, if they'll take them, or nobody wants to go to jail, but jail can produce some pretty good results if you are autistic. I don't know, it's kind of controversial. What do you think about that?
Well, I wouldn't go
better to have structure in the home than sending the kid to jail.
I love the idea of structure. I absolutely agree with that. That's structure for all of us, right? It's going back to the question about boundaries, that we need some structure to feel safe. And at some point, we also need to start pushing away some boundaries so we can grow as individuals, so we can grow, internally, mentally, and fully as human beings. Otherwise, we stay in that structure. And
so, Irma, how can our listeners reach you if they have some questions they want to ask you, or see if you have any books available? Or
you can read my
Facebook, all that.
You can read my book. It's a short and condensed story. It's called Fish Dreams: A Mother's Journey from Curing Her Son with Autism to Loving Him as He Is. Or you can reach me at irmavelasquez.com. There's a link there to my website. Irma Velasquez, IRMAVELASQUEZ.com.
Got it. Debbie, how can people reach you? Mayor Debbie.
MayorDebbie.com. I'm a former mayor. I'm also an author. And so right now there's a lot of information about what I've been doing for the last year or so. But you can go to Amazon.com and look for my Integrity 101 series. And you'll find about 4 or 5 books that will give you some advice on how to get involved in your local government and make it better.
That's right. Ben Franklin famously said, "Is evil men rule when good men do nothing?" So, good men don't want to go into politics because it's a thankless job and your enemies crucify you. And but you know what? We got to get rid of those people, and hopefully we're on a good trajectory. So my #1 selling book, It's Your Life Too, How to Thrive as a Caregiver, is on sale wherever books are sold, and also on my free membership website, caregiverdave.com, where you can also schedule a free 30-minute initial coaching call. Talk about whatever you're struggling with. I also invite you to join my Caregiver Dave Facebook community of 34,000 caregivers. Lots of tools, resources, videos, this radio show, and much, much more. And hey, if you click the like or follow button or the subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this interview on, it helps us reach even more. Again, thank you to my listeners, my hosts, my guests. Thank you all over the world. And thanks for tuning in every Wednesday and making us the #1 caregiver podcast and radio show on the internet. Until next week, same time, same channel. May God richly bless you all. Thank you.
One Arm, One Leg, 100 Words, Overcoming Unbelievable Hardships is about Charlene, a stroke survivor. Back in 1996, Charlene was a healthy, normal, very active 52-year-old woman whose amazing talents resembled that of both a Martha Stewart and a Wonder Woman. But all that changed when she suffered a massive stroke that left her severely speech impaired and paralyzed on the right side. Who am I? My name is David. I've had the privilege of being Charlene's husband since 1975. We had a wonderful fairy tale storybook-like courtship that culminated in our marriage a year later. Charlene had just come out of a marriage where after 10 years, she received 2 black eyes and a broken nose by her former husband when he came home high on speed. Charlene believed in no second chances of any kind for abuse, so she left. Finding herself all alone in the world with her 5 and 10-year-old daughters Cynthia Lorraine and Deborah Lynn, she started raising them by herself for the next 2 years. Then fate brought us all together. After falling in love with Charlene, Cindy, and Debbie, our love then produced Rebecca Elizabeth. We had a wonderful, normal life for the next 20 years. But today, things are very different for everyone. How about the reaction of 9-time Grammy and Dove Award recipient, the godfather of contemporary gospel Christian music, Andre Crouch? Charlene just won't let the promises of God go, and she has not let her circumstances get in the way of her faith. She's not just a survivor, she's more than a conqueror, as the Bible states. You'll be encouraged by her testimony, regardless of what you're going through. Available everywhere.
Sometimes it feels like the sun will never rise, like the birds will never sing.